So, first of all, thank you everybody for making the time today. To start, I actually wanted to give some time for Sean to give a quick intro to himself and actually why he started Versori, because this exact problem is very parallel to that overall kind of story arc of why Versori even exists.
Yeah, thank you very much, George, and really nice to be speaking on this today. Yeah, I'm in an airport in South Africa, so if it's a little bit jittery and my signal's not great, blame South African Wi-Fi, not me, but we'll try and get through with it. So I founded Versori because many years ago, maybe 8-9 years ago, I founded a company called Mercato, and Mercato is a marketplace platform. So we would implement the marketplace platform for large retailers so they could become a marketplace. But we worked across multiple different marketplace types, whether it would be reselling places like Pretty Little Thing. They had a reseller marketplace, which Mercato did. Or we would do procurement marketplaces for large industrial companies where they would need to be aggregating components and parts from multiple suppliers so their buying group members could purchase them centrally in the marketplace. And we had an engineering team of around about 45, and over half of them were all working on integrations. We would deliver the marketplace platform and then would have to do the integrations, whether that be into the core retailer systems, whether that be ERPs, warehouse management systems, order management systems, etc. But the biggest integration problem was how merchants connected and transformed their data into these marketplaces. Because of course, everyone has all their data in their own taxonomy or in another Catalogue taxonomy, and they need to transform that to be able to work and format correctly on that marketplace. So I was going crazy. All my engineers were working on integrations and working on data transformations, and I wasn't building product. So when we looked into the market to see an iPaaS, or we looked into the market to see a good data transformation tool, there was nothing that was available for us with the dynamic federated environment that we're now going into. It's not just one central source of truth, it's multiple different systems, multiple marketplaces. There was no iPaaS out there that could support us with that integration journey. So when we exited out of Mercato, I decided to found an integration platform where I thought I could change the game. So hopefully that's what we're doing now.
Amazing. Thanks, Sean. To start, I want to give a quick kind of overview of the problem. Many of you joining the call are marketplace and merchandise leaders, so we're not going to spend too long on this, and then we'll drop right into the solution from there. So about 12 months ago, a pretty major US retailer approached us with a pretty critical problem. Onboarding catalogs for their merchants was taking in the region of kind of 6 to 8 weeks. And that's predominantly because that brand was coming to them with a catalog. That catalog was either in another marketplace like Amazon, it was in CSVs, it was in a PIM. And to onboard it, they were literally manually mapping those fields over. That manual mapping generally led to, one, a large amount of time. Two, it led to a large amount of listing errors. Those listing errors either resulted in the marketplace saying, hey, can you go back and fix these, further extending the time frame, or they were pushing those listings live. But of course, a poor quality listing makes it difficult to do good performance search and ultimately just hurts sales because customers are less likely to buy when the listing is missing critical details or the details it does have seem to be an error relative to what they're expecting. For the marketplace, there were 3 critical problems as a result of that. One, they were seeing a large amount of churn during their seller onboarding phase. As sellers were joining, they were going through part of the process and then pretty quickly dropping off. 2, they were having to investing millions in support, trying to get these merchants through the manual mapping process. And then finally, once they were listed, the quality of those listings was sometimes not as high as they wanted. And so you can see actually this diagram on the right kind of pretty clearly explains what that marketplace was going through. And what we found talking to other marketplaces is this is not an isolated problem. This happens across the marketplace landscape. To address that, we actually looked to AI. AI represents a very large part of how we operate at Versori. We're an AI-enabled integration platform. We use everything from LLMs tuned to our kind of own capabilities to RAG to MCP. And so it was a pretty natural step to say, okay, how could we solve this with AI? And so what we landed on was building AI models that were tuned to a taxonomy. So we took that marketplace's taxonomy, and we tuned an AI model designed to map attributes to their taxonomy. So now the AI model had a full understanding of their taxonomy tree, how they structured SKU data in their marketplace. That was then embedded into an integration. And so now we have the ability to pull product data up from any source, whether that's a PIM, a CSV, another marketplace, pass it through the AI model and transform that data from the source into their taxonomy structure, and then push it to their marketplace. And as a result, we were able to automate the mapping process to a very high accuracy. In fact, we're looking at about a 99.8% accuracy across millions of SKUs at this point. And importantly, when we did find an error that was not in the mapping itself, but actually in the attributes data, we are able to intelligently suggest an attribute fix for that. And that fix could either be pushed to the seller saying, hey, we found this error in your data, here's how we suggest you fix it. Or we could actually automate the process of just applying the fix ourselves for very high confidence scenarios. The outcome of that looks something like this diagram. A seller would come in, they would simply connect their existing data source, we would pass it through the model, and then it would appear in the marketplace. And the outcome really meant, instead of a 8-week onboarding process that generally involved a large amount of manual work, a seller was coming in and spending maybe 5 minutes, and ultimately they could actually complete the entire journey in 3 clicks. They would log into their seller portal, they would select the product data origin, so they might connect to another marketplace, they might upload their CSV. We would map it via our taxonomy model, and then they would review in draft before they go live. So there is still that human in the loop, just as a final safety check. We have a short video. Sean, anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, sorry. I just think it's worth noting that by far the most important element of scaling your marketplace, or as a merchant adopting to a marketplace, is the user experience. Everything from the data transformation for the user interface, for them to log in and get to the seller portal and then review their products once they've been transformed and onboarded, is so critical. And then time comes into that as well. So when you're looking at an 8-week, and that was a low side, we've seen 16 weeks for an average time of backwards and forwards in data validation. But when that time goes from 8 weeks or 16 weeks right down to just 3 clicks and 5 minutes, not only does it accelerate the brand's journey from getting onto the marketplace, but for the marketplace and the retailer as well, having that time to value. So the GMVs rise quicker and you can hit those targets with onboarding sellers, SKUs, and committed people to it. If the user experience is good, then it's all beneficial from then onwards as well.
Yeah. So to kind of show you actually what that user experience looks like, we want to give you a quick example of what it looks like. In this video, you can see us clicking into an integration. So this is the onboarding page, and we're going to walk through importing items for a seller. Now, in this case, we're pulling them into Walmart just as an example. And so the seller is just going to authorize us to say, yes, you can look at my SKU data. So once that's authorized, they're going to be presented with a screen to connect to their source. Now, in this case, we've selected Amazon as an example. And so they would connect their Amazon account. And actually, during this phase, we can actually ask for user input about what other sources they might want to see added to the system. It's just a great way to understand your sellers better and try and identify where they might be pulling product data from in the first place. Now, this is where the AI model comes in. We're actually, in this process, mapping the SKUs. And so the model in the back end is taking all the SKU data, conducting the transformation, and pushing it back. And from that point on, all it is for the seller is waiting for it to complete. Now, if it's a few hundred SKUs, it might be 5 minutes. If it's 10,000 plus SKUs, it might take a couple of hours. And in that case, all we do is we email the seller at the end of that experience saying, hey, we've completed all your items. Feel free to go into draft and review these. They can then go into their seller center and review these items one by one within draft and check that they're happy with the SKUs. Now, importantly, we push these to draft because it ensures that human in the loop. We still want to ensure that no SKU ends up mapped in a way that shouldn't be. And so by pushing to draft, we avoid that. The AI is extremely accurate at about 99.8%, but that still leaves, when you're mapping 10,000 SKUs, the opportunity for a little bit of error. Now, of course, this doesn't always solve the entire problem. just because we can map SKUs incredibly accurately doesn't necessarily mean the data that was entered for that particular field was accurate in the first place. And so as an extension of what we've been developing, we're actually now using the same AI models to tackle attribute errors. Now, here you can see a small chunk of a flow diagram about how we actually tackle this. So we pass a SKU through the mapping model. We migrate the SKU from Amazon to Walmart, as you just saw in the example. Now, in that process, we identify 5 fields where, while we mapped it correctly, the field produced an error because of the data that was entered. During that, we then pass that through an enrichment model. Now, the enrichment model is loaded with the rule engine of that particular marketplace, and we can then use our AI models to address what that attribute should look like. As an example, if you enter a description that is too long for the description field in that marketplace, it will flag an error. We can take that description, use the language preferences of that marketplace, and rewrite the description to the correct length. And then during draft, can promote that to the owner of the SKU, to the seller, and say, hey, we found this error. Here's a suggested fix. Now, that's a very different experience to just telling the seller that there is an error. In this case, we're making it so much simpler for them because we're suggesting the fix. All they have to do is accept it and carry on. And it makes the overall kind of completion journey for them to get listed in your marketplace much quicker compared to now having to go back, re-edit, and re-upload. Sean, anything you want to add there?
Yeah, and another benefit of that is because Versori is a bi-directional integration platform as well. So when it comes down to, let's say it's a small brand and they only have a certain amount of attributes listed on their item, and then they need to list onto your marketplace, and that has multiple different attributes that they need to be filled out, so required fields. Now, we have built, and in the process of some larger retailers, where we can use that enrichment model to also create the new fields based on information in their description or other variant information or attribution to create those additional fields. So for example, if the products need to be created as one product and they've all got variants of for different colors, then instead of 1 by 1 products, red, blue, green. So we can create a single product group, create the variants of that product, but then also create them as additional fields back upstream in their e-commerce platform as well. So they're not just inputting the data once downstream, they can actually maintain that data at their source of truth as well. So it's another solution for inconsistent data, especially if they've got a delta of product updates from the source into the target as well. So to keep that consistency, we offer that in the enrichment model.
Yeah. So the question that generally comes up here from retailers and marketplaces that we work with is, this is great. Awesome. You've got an AI model, it fixes all my problems, and it's embedded in a nice integration. But does that mean I now need to build and maintain a large number of integrations? And in the software space, that's a pretty dreaded question, and actually the entire reason we built Versori, because building and maintaining integrations is notoriously challenging, time-consuming, and expensive. So Versori is actually an AI-enabled iPaaS. That is the core product we offer. We enable companies to design, build, test, deploy an integration in a matter of hours to days using an intelligent set of agents that help you research an integration scope. So they look into the API docs, they look into how to build the integration, a build agent, which will actually build the integration for you, written in code, an authentication and deployment agent, which will support in setting up the authentication and actually deploying to our infrastructure. And then once you're live, we can actually automate maintenance. And so a large reason we've been able to work with so many marketplaces and retailers and deploy to them a number of integrations with our AI models integrated without adding huge amounts of cost or development work is because our platform enables us to build the required integrations for these systems in a matter of hours to days. And we'll get on to a little bit about why the success story we've had with another marketplace in a minute that touches on this. And so if you're interested in learning more about our broader integration capabilities, please feel free to reach out to us directly. We're always happy to schedule a one-on-one demo, but we won't spend too much time on this today. Sean, I don't know if you want to add any more to this kind of before we move on to the case study.
No, all good at that point.
Amazing. So the marketplace we've been lucky enough to spend a lot of time working with over the last kind of year or so is the North American division of Walmart. When they came to us, the SKU mapping process was taking a number of weeks to get small and large sellers through. The mapping accuracy they were able to achieve manually was causing a number of challenges because it led to that long time frame. And if they did accept the errored listings, it led to poor quality SKU search across their marketplace. And more importantly, they were investing a lot of money finding these sellers and bringing them in, only for kind of 40+% of those sellers to churn during that funnel period due to the onboarding challenges. With our AI model built into their integration that now allows sellers to onboard their catalog from a variety of different sources, they're looking at about a 99.8% SKU mapping accuracy. So those SKUs are coming in and being highly accurately mapped, and actually most are entirely complete. It's only kind of one or two at a time that require a human in the loop. We've reduced their onboarding down to 2 to 3 clicks. In fact, once a seller is approved, you can run through that entire integration flow we showed you in literally 2 to 3 minutes. Now, it might take a couple of hours for the model to run in the back end, but as we said, from a user experience perspective, they're welcome to go away and do whatever they want in the process, and we'll just notify them later on. And as a result of that, we've actually substantially reduced both the seller support costs required for their marketplace, but also the amount of churn during that phase. Now, in the last 6 months, we've onboarded just over 2.5 million SKUs across both Walmart and a number of other marketplaces that we work with. As I said, that average onboarding time is 2 to 3 minutes. And so that is just an initial deployment, but of course, the scale that's possible when you can onboard that many SKUs that quickly across all the different marketplaces available becomes substantially beneficial both for the marketplace as they look to grow, but also for sellers who are at a stage where they are now selectively picking which marketplace to onboard to because they just don't have the bandwidth to onboard to all the different marketplaces available when onboarding is such an intense process. And the real beauty for a marketplace is this was not a 4-month project. This was not a 12-month project. This was not hundreds of people and a massive team. This was actually built, tested, deployed in under 4 weeks by Versori with the help of a few engineers at the marketplace. And ultimately, actually, myself, Sean, and our AI engineer, Dipit, led the entire project. So this is not a multi-million-dollar consulting group coming in and spending time to spin these up. This is a very well-defined piece of technology that can be quickly implemented and quickly deployed to enable your marketplace to scale extremely quickly. That actually marks the end of our kind of presentation. I will leave one of these screens up here just to highlight what we've walked through today. But if you have any questions, now is a great time. Myself and Sean are happy to answer technical questions, business questions. Feel free to drop them in the chat. If what you've seen but want to ask us questions one-on-one, there'll be a follow-up email afterwards. Feel free to book in some time. And then otherwise, we just published a white paper on this exact topic, which we'll drop a link in the chat. Please feel free to download that white paper. It actually goes through the entire problem, the entire solution, and a much more in-depth dive on the use case too. So Sophie asked Sean, how secure is the data when it comes to mapping between the two systems?
Yeah, so what's really important for us when founding the business, I wanted to achieve 2 things. One, I didn't want to pin our customers into a technical vendor lock-in, meaning that they were stuck into working with their integration platform as a service forever and a day. And if they decide to change, then it completely ruptures their own SLAs. That was one big consideration. The next consideration was we didn't want to store any customer data. We didn't want to store any user data. If you want to store user data in an integration flow, then integrate to a database, integrate into a data lake or a warehouse, etc. So Versori does not store data. We process data. So whether that be from a polling or a trigger, we pull that data through and then process it to the target and to the end. Now, when it comes to running things like creating and updating, we do store the key values. So What this does is a unique identifier of a product SKU or a GTIN on one side, and then the unique identifier on the other side. We create a mappings table to map those two unique identifiers to say that this product is the same as that product, which it results in no duplication of product data. You, the retailers and the merchants that are selling through the marketplace, can be confident that their products are always stayed up to date without any duplications as well. So really secure.
Awesome. Thanks, Sean. So we have a couple of minutes. We have 5 more minutes. Any other questions for Sean or myself, either on the AI models, how we develop integrations, the kind of deployment method? Happy to really touch on anything that might come up.
And I think it's worth noting that every single retailer that we have worked with to date, we've always gone through a proof of concept process. So if you're a retailer watching the webinar at the moment and you're interested in having your merchants get live with normalized and enriched product data on your marketplace quicker, more efficiently, with a better experience, then please reach out to us. We're more than happy to run a proof of concept with you, spend some time, understand what all the requirements are, what is the best use case for your merchants, and I'm sure you'll find value pretty quickly.
Yeah, so we actually have another question from Ian. Are you able to select which fields to update in Shopify and which to not touch? So there's actually quite a lot, like the AI model alone is very powerful, but the kind of neat piece is how the AI model sits relative to pre and post processing techniques that we use on the data. And so a large part of that is like understanding, okay, which fields are unstructured data, which fields are structured data. Within that structured data, is it a binary system or is there multiple options? All this is taken into account in the integration flow. And so we can actually wire into that any logic we like. So in your case of this question, if you wanted us to only focus on certain fields being changed, we could tell the system to do that. That's a very easy kind of logic gate to put in there.
Yeah, I think there's another way to target that as well. Is one, if you can implement the logic up front, that's great. But Versori also supports dynamic variables as well. So if there is variables, let's say you have your marketplace, but you want 1,000 different merchants coming on, and each merchant might have a slight different data transformation or a slight different field that they want to transform, etc. You can offer this through dynamic variables and surface it into your embedded UI for them to self-manage as well. So you can have the AI fully automate the process and the data transformation, but instead of just going to the result screen, which we showed in the demo, you can have them sit into a intermediary screen where they can go through their data, pick out, and then almost remap if they see any errors or if they see any issues or they don't want to map certain fields, etc. You can elevate that all through the UIs as well, and that's available through Versori. And Ian, I just want to make a note as well. You must be fed up with hearing me speak, because if you saw me talk in the South African conference and now on the webinar, thanks for the commitment.
Awesome. Sean, I don't know if you want to give any kind of closing words or anything else at a technical level you want to touch on specific around the AI itself, but we're getting close to time. So if there's any more questions, please feel free for people to drop them in. Otherwise, I think we'll wrap up.
Yeah, I think the closing words that I'll make is I worked in the world of marketplaces and retail for a long time. Even before the last company, Mercato, I was heading up product at a company called Social Chain, where we would distribute products into multiple different marketplaces. So I've been around it a long time, and I love this market. I'm obsessed about solving this problem, and we have been working on it heads down for the last 4.5 years. And then the talent as well. So a lot of the best talent from a previous company came into Versori. So the use case for integrations that we as individuals excel at the best is marketplace integration. Really excited to work with you all as well. And Ennis, I just see your question coming through there. Yes, the tool has an additional cost. It is a license that we work with our customers to see what their volumes are, how many marketplaces they want, how many data sources or catalogs that they want to connect to, and how much work is involved in delivering that, whether your team is delivering it on our platform or whether we offer the implementation. So yeah, it's more of a case-by-case basis, but I can promise you we have saved and quote customers over $10 million just on their data transformation piece. Tens of millions of dollars.
Yeah.
In answer to the question.
Okay, so we're at time, and I don't want to keep anybody too long. So first of all, thank you so much for everybody that came through and watched today. There will be a recording available, and we'll send that through afterwards. If anybody is interested in a further conversation, please feel free to either reach out, book through our website, or if in the follow-up email from myself, there'll be an option to book there too. If anybody is at Shop Talk or Grocery Shop or NRF over the next couple of months, I know Shop Talk is literally next week. Myself and Sean and the team will be there. We're always happy to meet one-on-one with yourself or any of your team. But otherwise, thank you so much, and we'll chat to you all soon.
Thank you very much, everyone.